And we are back.
Hello
Episode
again.
158 of The Horror Guys.
I'm Kevin,
I'm Brian.
and we're going to talk about some horror movies and a short.
We got horror movies?
We do.
Okay.
We do indeed.
What do we got?
Well, we got The Undead from 1957, Vault of Horror from 1973, and Tales from the Crypt, the previous year, 1972. I actually said those backwards because one came before the other. They're directly kind of sequely, sort of. And When Animals Dream from 2014.
Sounds like four big winners.
Well,
No, not entirely.
Not big winners. Not entirely. We got one big winner and one not so much, and two pretty good ones in the middle.
Okay, there we go. I can't argue with that.
That's my opinion.
All right, and also remember to sign up over at horrorbulletin.com for our free weekly newsletters. This week we will be having two bonus reviews. Oxygen from 2021, which we both liked.
Yes, it did. And it's a very science fiction one. It's got some horror elements for
It's
sure.
claustrophobic, and there's a lot of scary stuff there, but it's basically a science fiction.
Yes.
And the other one is Voodoo Woman from 1957. It's not at all racist, is it?
Oh, it was so racist.
It's pretty
So
it's
politically
pretty awful.
incorrect. Yeah, times have changed.
Okay, and of course you can get all our reviews compiled monthly in the Horror Bulletin magazine. Episode 6, the March issue, will be on sale in just 2 or 3 days after this podcast is released, so be sure to pop on over to horrorguys.com/monthly and pick that one up. Yay, monthly.
Monthly.
All
Every
right.
single month.
Every month,
Yeah.
yes. 6 issues in a row so far. Doing great.
All right.
Going strong. Speaking of going strong, we're going to start out with 1957, The Undead.
Well, I don't know about going strong.
It's got such a cool title and movie poster, though.
The best thing about this is the poster. You really need to check out the poster, folks.
Terror that screams
It's
from the
awesome.
grave.
And the movie is very not awesome.
So, who made it?
This was a Roger Corman directed film,
Oh, my.
written by Charles B. Griffith, Mark Hanna. It stars Pamela Duncan, Richard Garland, and Allison Hayes in the main roles.
Hour and 11 minutes, so it's actually fairly short. You know, it didn't feel that short watching it.
It felt kind of long, actually.
Really kind of did, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a spoiler-free judgment zone.
Oh,
on that.
okay.
I should read that.
What's it about without spoiling it?
Well, all you have to do is time travel to time travel to the past is get hypnotized very deeply. Who knew? Yeah. Well, at least that's the driving premise of this movie. And once we get there, in the past, it's a tale of witches, devilry, action, and romance. Sounds great, doesn't it?
It sounds
Yeah.
good.
I mean, it does have some bright spots, but it's not really very great.
Yeah, the whole concept of the movie is, everybody has a past life.
And
if
she
you can be
literally travels to
You
it.
can be hypnotized to remember your past life, except that's where they forget the premise and they actually do time travel somehow.
And he physically goes back to the past by that, too, which
It
is
makes no logical sense.
It makes less sense as it goes along.
Okay, so the full spoilery synopsis. Satan introduces the story. That's the high point of the film there. He brags about how talented he is in his torments. Then he laughs maniacally. Ah, ha, 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 ha. We then cut to Diana Love, a prostitute. A John takes her to the Psychical Research Institute. Because, if you're going to pick up a hooker, you want to go get their mind read. Okay.
Well, they needed a test subject.
The man, Quintus, talks to the old professor. He wants to invade the depths of the mind. Quintus wants to hypnotize her and use that power to send her back in time. She charges by the hour, so hey, why not?
Yeah, I love how she's just completely okay with it. Whatever.
Yeah, whatever, do what you want,
Yeah,
as long as you're paying.
if that's what you're into.
He does it. He hypnotizes her right there in the professor's office, and the professor looks on. It takes a long time, but she eventually finds herself in another place. She starts speaking in French. She doesn't know French. And he wants her to check out her other lives. We flash back to when she was Helene, locked up, accused of being a witch. Gabo, the jailer, taunts Helena and tells her that she's about to die. Diana, the prostitute from the future, talks inside Helene's mind, and apparently Diana is inside the woman of the past's own mind.
You know, I think you came up with an awesome movie title accidentally there. Diana, the prostitute from the future.
I'll bet it's been done. Well, she then helps the woman to escape. Okay, so in the jail cell, Helena is the prisoner accused of being a witch, and
Same
Diana
actress.
is same actress. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Diana is the woman from the future who isn't physically there because this is all a hypnosis thing.
And this is one of her ancestors.
They talk to each other, and the woman from the future tells Helena how to get out of this. And at that point, Helena just sort of goes away, and it becomes Diane in Helene's body.
Basically, yeah.
We forget that part.
Mm-hmm.
You got to forget a lot of things in this movie. Livia and her imp appear to speak with Pendragon. He thinks Helene is innocent and wants to free her, and Livia agrees with him. She's a witch herself, and she knows Helene isn't in the club. Livia wants either Pendragon's heart or his soul. Helene hides inside Smolkin the gravedigger's coffin, and he recognizes Helene but helps her anyway. Livia goes to see Scroop the bar. Who came up with these names? Gobbo and Scroop. And, yeah, okay. Smolkin. So Scroop the barkeep, and he's preparing for the witches' Sabbath when they kill 3 witches every year. Livia tempts Pendragon, but he still holds out hope for Helene. Meanwhile, Helene goes to hide at a real witch's house. This witch, Meg, says that Livia was the one who enchanted Smolkin in the first place. Meg goes to see Scroop and Pendragon and tells them that she has Helene. Meg and Livia have words because they are enemy witches.
Different kinds of witches.
I'm a witch. No, I'm a witch.
Well, they're both witches.
I'm the better
They're
witch.
both right.
Yeah. Pendragon goes to Helene. He needs to protect her until morning when the witches' Sabbath activities are over. I guess they can only kill the witch on the one day a year. Back in the modern world, Quintus and the professor, I'm having trouble with that word today.
Professor?
Professor. Listen to Diane's story as she tells them what she's experiencing. Quintus mentions that given time, he could follow Diane into the past. He wants to go back in time and undo the changes that Diane has made.
Yeah, because she screwed up by freeing Helene. She wasn't supposed to be freed, so she has messed up her own past, one of her own ancestors. The timeline has been skewed.
Because hypnosis lets you talk to your past, apparently.
And change it.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Livia needs a severed head for her ritual, so she takes Scroop's. Pendragon agrees to sell his soul to the devil to free Helene, and Livia is ready to make the bargain. The witches converge on the cemetery, and there are a lot of them. Livia summons Satan, who says he wants dancing and singing. That Satan looks like a fun guy. Several dead women get up and do a spontaneous interpretive devil dance, all in matching costumes.
Tricky.
And this is like in the 1400s or something, and it's just entirely too choreographed.
Yes, very much so.
Satan's offering boons for those who sign his book. A leper is healed. An old man is given a bag of gold. Pendragon is ready to sign as well, but Quintus arrives and tells him to stop. Two time travelers now. The devil knows Quintus is from another time, and Pendragon agrees to go with Quintus and rescue Helene from the tower.
And Quintus appears, Terminator style, just drops in naked.
Yeah, he appears naked, but Diane didn't.
Yeah, well, Diane didn't really physically appear. I mean, he plopped in, like his clothes are still in modern day.
Yeah.
His empty suit is there.
Empty suit, yes.
he literally transported.
Meanwhile, Helene isn't even in the tower. She's waiting safely at Meg's house with Smolkin. Pendragon arrives, and he's surprised that Livia lied to him. Helene/Diane recognizes Quintus, but can't quite place him. Quintus goes to see Meg and explains that he's from the future. He explains everything. Everyone converges on the cemetery, where Satan offers to judge them all. Can they convince Helene to die now in order to save Diane in the future, or stay where she is and erase Diane and all her future lives? Helene decides to die now so she can live over and over in the future. Pendragon chases after her, and when Livia tries to stop him, he kills her. All these people dying in the past that, don't think too hard.
Well, but, they're already dead.
Back in
They were
town,
supposed to have died.
they behead one witch, then a second, and then Helene shows up to lose her head. She gets down on the block and gets beheaded just as the sun rises. Meanwhile, back in the modern day, Diane wakes up. The professor is still there, but Quintus's body has vanished. Back in the past, Satan explains to Quintus that he can't go home. He laughs maniacally some more and then vanishes. Ha 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 ha.
And most importantly, the prostitute saw the error of her ways, and she is going to live a good life now.
Yes, because that's the important thing.
That's how things were done back then in movies.
Right.
Yeah, the prostitute either had to be redeemed or had to be killed.
Wow.
In the movies from that era, that's pretty much how it was.
Well, I loved Smokin' the Gravedigger's nursery rhymes. The imp who was the witch's familiar was fun, and the rivalry between different kinds of witches was also interesting. When Quintus traveled back in time, he was naked but still had his wristwatch.
Yeah, details.
Diane, on the other hand, appeared fully clothed. The faux old-style English sounds like they're trying to do a Shakespearean drama, but yeah, this ain't Shakespeare.
It was no Shakespeare.
There are way too many witches, and the only person who was arrested for being a witch wasn't really one of them. The fake bats and spiders don't really support a lot of suspension of disbelief. That, and no one gets particularly upset when Satan himself just shows up and hangs around.
Yeah, like this happens every week.
Yeah, all the witches were like, "Hey, Satan, how you doing?"
Yeah, and, the guy who traveled back,
He didn't seem surprised either.
Yeah, and, if Satan appeared, wouldn't you have, like, a million questions for him? Or, and he just kind of, oh, hey,
Yeah.
here we are in line with everybody else.
Time travel or no time travel, if I meet Satan, I got questions.
Yeah.
Between the time travel, the witches, Satan, and the romantic angle, there is a lot going on here, and the fact that Helen/Diane is from the future doesn't really seem to affect very much. Other than Diane giving Helene advice immediately upon arrival, there's not much sign of Diane during the past activities. Quintus was educated and studied in Tibet for 7 years and clearly had a lot of knowledge of the occult. Then he found himself standing right next to Satan himself and didn't even offer to have a conversation with the ultimate in supernatural answers. This film is a mess.
But I'd enjoy having the poster on my wall.
It is a nice poster.
Yeah.
Best thing.
It's a good one.
Well, did we watch a short film this week?
Yeah, we saw one called Samantha, a brand new one from this year. Directed by Joshua Carley, also written by Joshua Carley. Stars Luke Edwards, Laura Caillotte, and Melissa St. Amand. And the runtime is 9 minutes, 17 seconds, and it is on YouTube.
It is. Watch it on YouTube right now for free.
Yeah. Well, a man, Henry, interviews a woman about her experiences. She seems to be pretty new at doing interviews. Jody starts her story. Her daughter died of a brain aneurysm, and her husband had dreams about her where she talked about heaven and the afterlife. And then we started seeing her in the bedroom. Not long after, she killed herself, and that's just the start of the story.
Well, no, the husband saw her in the bedroom, and he killed himself.
Oh, he killed himself. I misread that. Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's really well done. It's mostly just two people talking in a room and some magical scenes off to the side. But the cinematography and audio is really good. It's a nice-looking little film. Of course, not everything is as it's portrayed in the beginning. Somebody is not what they're pretending to be. But the story evolves, and it is really good.
Yes, it is.
All right. Now, we're all going to take a little time-traveling trip here back to 1972 and do Tales from the Crypt.
Which was directed by Freddie Francis. Written by Milton Subotsky, Al Fieldstein, Johnny Craig, and Bill Gaines. And this is from the classic EC Comics, these stories. They made them live. Well, it stars Joan Collins, Peter Cushing, Ralph Richardson, and many others. Runtime is 1 hour and 32 minutes, and there's a trailer on YouTube.
I see how Joan Collins is topped billed, and you know she only has 15 sentences in the entire film?
It was, in one of the stories. She's the main character in one of the stories,
Yeah,
so I guess that
where
counts.
she runs around alone a lot.
She does, yeah. There's no one for her to talk to. There's a lot of running around.
Yeah.
And that's one that was redone in the modern Tales from the Crypt series.
Oh?
That's her story.
You say modern Tales from the Crypt. That was, what, the 80s or 90s?
Okay, moderner. Yeah. Well, it's an anthology of short stories from the old comic books, and they all hold up pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't be bad is the lesson here.
If you are bad, you will pay.
Bad people get their comeuppance. And the stories are entertaining, holds up, all pretty well.
All right. Yeah, it's all very dated with the scenes and everything, but yeah, the stories are good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we wander through a cemetery as the credits roll, finally settling on a crypt. A group of people take a tour of the catacombs, and the tour guide warns them all not to stray from him. It's easy to get lost down here.
So what do? They stray.
Get lost. Yeah, 5 people soon get separated from the group. They get trapped in a room with this old man called the Crypt Keeper. He doesn't quite look as bad as the TV series one.
No, or the one guy from the comics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he asks them what their plans are for when they leave here. So Joanne answers him first in a story called And All Through the House. It's Christmas time, and you notice of all 5 stories, only she has Christmas?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And her husband has gotten her a nice gift and gotten everything ready for their celebration. Joanne then kills him with a fireplace poker. Whack!
That was abrupt.
Yeah, it was. She cleans up the blood while her daughter calls from upstairs wanting to know if Santa has come yet. The radio alerts her that a homicidal maniac has escaped from the asylum and he may be wearing a Santa suit. Sure enough, he starts rattling the doorknobs and peeking through the window. She can't call the police because her husband's body is still lying in the living room with blood everywhere. She runs around locking all the doors and windows. Finally, she's safe from the maniac. She poses her dead husband's body to make it look like he fell down the stairs. Well, at least all the blood is gone and the evidence is set up. Then she notices her daughter is missing. Oh, her daughter has let Santa into the house.
Oops.
And of course, Santa punishes the naughty.
And she has been naughty.
Reflection of Death. Carl goes next with the second story. He's all packed up and needs to drive all night to his appointment in the morning. He goes to his girlfriend's house. He and Susan are leaving together. He's abandoned his family for her. She drives while he has nightmares in the back seat. And then the car crashes and burns. Carl gets out of the car, but everyone he runs to for help is terrified of what they see. He goes to Susan's house and finds her there. She's blind now after the crash. It's been 2 years since Carl was killed in that wreck. Carl wakes up from the nightmare, and the crash happens again. Time loop.
And he's dead.
Elliot tells his plans for the future next in a story called Poetic Justice. His elderly neighbor, Grimsdyke, is very popular with the local children. Elliot doesn't like the old man. He's just a junk collector. The old man's wife died not long ago, and Elliot wants him to move out. Elliot destroys another neighbor's garden and blames Grimsdyke's dogs.
Yeah, and this is a rich guy who wants to, he's already rich and ridiculously has huge amounts of property. He wants the neighbor's property too.
This poor old man who has nothing.
Because he's utterly greedy and wants it all.
Well, then the police take away the old man's dogs. Grimsdyke then talks to his dead wife with a Ouija board. Danger, it says. Elliot arranges for the old man to lose his job, just short of getting his retirement pay. One of the dogs comes home, which makes the old man happy at last. Elliot turns the local Mothers Against Grimsdyke. That seems like it ought to be a thing.
It does, yeah.
Mothers Against M-A-G. Mothers Against Grimsdyke.
M-A-G.
Who forbid their children from going near the old man. No visitors, no work, no children. Grimsdyke gets depressed. Elliot makes fake Valentine cards looking like they came from everyone in town, telling how much they all hate Grimsdyke. Several days later, they smell something bad. They go over and find Grimsdyke's body. He's hanged himself in despair.
Hey, we haven't seen Grimsdyke in several days, have we?
What's that smell?
So they go look. Yeah.
Well, exactly 1 year later, on Valentine's Day, Old Man Grimsdyke rises from the grave and comes after Elliot. Now, Elliot really is heartless.
It's a slow revenge.
Why'd it take a year?
Special day. Had to wait again.
All right. Wish you were here. Jason takes his turn. He's gone bankrupt from bad investments. He'll have to start selling his possessions soon. And his wife brings up the little Chinese statue they bought on a trip not long ago. It's got an inscription that says it will grant 3 wishes to its owner. He's no fool. He's read that book too.
He has.
He warns about the monkey's paw.
Wishes go bad.
He warns about the monkey's paw when his wife wishes for a lot of money. A man in a skull mask follows his car on a motorcycle and causes him to fatally crash. A lawyer tells Jason's wife that he had lots of insurance money coming. She remembers the wish. She wants to wish for her husband to return, but the lawyer's read that story too. She wishes for him to come back exactly as he was immediately before the accident. Well, there's a knock on the door. Men in suits bring in a coffin. Turns out Jason died of a heart attack before the accident.
Whoops.
So he was already dead before the accident.
Careful what you wish for.
Yeah, so she wishes for him to be just like he was so they bring in the dead guy. She wishes for him to come back to life.
And live forever, just like he is right now.
And he wakes up screaming because he's already been embalmed. He's awake, he's alive, he's embalmed. She then cuts him to pieces with a sword, but he still won't die.
Yeah, all the pieces are alive.
She wished him alive forever. You know, if you were actually going to live forever and couldn't be damaged, I imagine you could probably recover from being embalmed somehow.
Oh, I don't know. It didn't look like it felt too good.
Oh, I'm sure it would be painful for a while, but forever is a long time.
Yeah, I don't know.
And the final story is called Blind Alleys. Major Rogers goes last. He's been in charge of a hospital full of blind men, and he goes to talk to the patients. Mr. Carter glares at Rogers as he leaves. There's no heat in this hospital. Everyone suffers in the cold. There aren't even any extra blankets. Carter goes to Rogers to complain, but Rogers says there's no money for heat or blankets.
Yeah, he comes in cutting corners.
Very cutting, yeah.
Yeah.
Carter explains that blind people aren't soldiers. Their other senses are sharpened, including, the sense of cold. This means that they suffer more in the cold, they taste the bad food more, they hear the bugs crawling on the walls. Rogers is still not sympathetic. He cuts their rations, but he eats very well himself. Carter and several others confront Rogers, but the Major sicks his attack dog on them. That night, the man on the bed next to Carter dies because Rogers won't call the doctor. They seem to have a doctor on staff, even.
And that's the last straw.
The next day, the blind men all donate a bit of their food, and Carter takes a plate to lure Rogers' dog away. They then lock the dog in a storage room. "It's our turn to give the orders now," says Carter ominously. They then lock Rogers in the room with a basement next door to the dog. Days pass. Rogers begs Carter to feed his dog. "All in good time," he answers. Finally, the door opens, and Rogers goes outside to find himself locked in a cage lined with razor blades and his own starving dog. One of them is going to eat the other.
And I think we know who.
Yeah, we do.
Since Rogers is there in the crypt.
Well, remember though, the crypt keeper told these guys to tell them what your plans are for after they get out. But now, back in the crypt, the crypt keeper explains that these visions are not of the future the way he said, but of the past.
Exactly.
These stories all tell how these 5 people died before sending them to hell. "Who's next? Perhaps you?" he asks. The end. Okay. Not the creepiest crypt keeper we've ever seen, but he does the job.
Unsettling. Yeah.
The stories had all previously appeared in Tales from the Crypt magazine, Vault of Horror, and the Haunt of Fear comic books. They're all good stories, but in my opinion at least, that last one seemed out to drag out a little bit too long with all the construction in the building.
A little bit. They could have got to it quicker.
They weren't talking, they weren't explaining, we were just seeing a bunch of blind men trying to build things.
Well, and I think they were emphasizing that they were letting the dog get good and hungry. Time was
passes,
passing.
Yes.
Yeah.
The others, on the other hand, were all well-paced and lots of fun. It turned out that this film was so successful that they did a sequel, The Vault of Horror, the very next year.
In 1973.
In my opinion, I like that one better than this one. I
Vault
like
of
The
Horror?
Vault of Horror better.
I did too.
But
Yeah.
the Vault of Horror is a
Both
little bit
good.
harder to find today, so I think it probably was not as successful. I had to go through quite a few hoops to find The Vault of Horror.
Check them both out if you can find them, though.
Yeah. Well, I suppose next up we should talk about The Vault of Horror.
Which was, it was directed by Ray Ward Baker, written by Al Fieldstein, William M. Gaines, he's not Bill Gaines this time, and Milton Sabatsky. Stars Kurt Jerkins.
Kurt Jurgens.
Okay.
It's funny. The credits of the movie call him Kurt. Kurt with a T. And IMDb calls him Kurd.
That's where the curd comes from.
I wonder if there's
Okay.
some sort of more recent correction,
A phonetic.
Phonetic.
Yeah.
Not genetic,
Yeah,
phonetic.
phonetic, yeah. Also Terry Thomas and Tom Baker.
Yeah, you can always tell
And
Terry
others.
Thomas because he's got that gap between his teeth.
But they get the top billing, yeah. Runtime, an hour and 27 minutes, and there's a trailer on YouTube.
Yeah.
Also a cool poster.
Yeah, it's all right.
And the spoiler-free Judgment Zone, it's a very good anthology of 5 horror stories, showing the fates of 5 different men brought together in a tie-together. Each one is very well done, with a strong cast and high production values that still holds up after 50 years.
50
years.
It is almost 50 years,
Almost
isn't
50
it?
years, yeah.
Huh. Well, 5 strangers take a defective, or maybe cursed, elevator and get trapped in a basement vault. A strange situation, this, almost like a dream, says one. For some reason, they all decide to share their recurring nightmares. Yep, that's an anthology.
And I have to say, they get a much better deal than the first people do.
The
This
first-
vault is laid out in it's chairs in a circle, and they've got drinks, multiple drinks to choose from, and all kinds of fancy snacks and smokes. And yeah, and the first one, they were just, sit in these bare wooden chairs in this crypt.
Yeah, these guys get the haunted buffet.
Definitely the best deal.
First story is Midnight Mess. The first tale begins. Rogers hires a private investigator to track down his sister, and then when the PI reports back, Rogers kills him and takes his money back. He goes to the town where his sister lives, runs into a man on the street who warns him to get inside before dark. He goes to the restaurant, but they close before dark. They come out after dark, says the waiter. He goes to his sister Donna's house. She says there have been 17 cases of bodies drained of blood. What are we in for here, do you suppose?
Vampires.
Rogers came for her because their father just recently died and left her everything, for as long as she lives, which turns out to be just a few more seconds.
He's really a bad guy.
He chuckles to himself as he leaves her body and goes outside. He goes back to that restaurant that was closing earlier, and now it is packed with people. The food all tastes kind of strange. Then he realizes that all the entries are made of blood. Once the other patrons realize that he's not a vampire, they all come after him, including his undead sister.
And then they have it fresh from the spigot.
They do.
And it was cool how they, an easy test to find out if he's not a vampire. The waiter pulls back a curtain with a mirror behind it.
And it shows one person.
Yeah, he's the only one reflected in the room.
The Neat Job is the next story. Critchett tells his dream next. He's planning to get married soon to Eleanor. He gets annoyed that she's moved the furniture. It really bothers his OCD. Everything must be precise in its place.
See, and of all the stories, too, the other ones are clearly bad people who did bad things, and this guy's just kind of a fuss budget. I mean, he's a jerky to her.
A whiny, bossy OCD
But,
guy.
I don't
He
know
doesn't
about...
kill anybody.
Yeah, I don't know about...
Nobody gets hurt.
Go to hell level of punishment for this guy. Yeah.
Well, everything must be in its place. He flips out when she switches his underwear drawer to make some room for her own things. "We're living chaos," he whines. He then lectures her on the value of neatness. She complains to her friend that she only married him for his money, and he goes to cook dinner, and then he freaks out when she forgot to replace the spaghetti sauce. The next morning, she has everything in perfect order, and he's completely pleased with her. She tiptoes around the house all day, terrified of doing anything that will set him off again. She has a little comedy of errors and accidentally destroys his workshop. He does flip out again, and she puts a hammer through his skull.
See, he's the victim here.
Yeah, pretty much. He had this nice, organized house, and she comes in and destroys it and kills him. It's all a matter of point of view.
She admits she was kind of a money digger.
Yeah.
She didn't want to work for a living. She'd marry a rich guy.
Well, she then cuts him up and puts all his body parts in jars on a shelf, carefully labeled. She did that part neatly.
She went off the edge.
Next story is called This Trick'll Kill You. Sebastian tells his nightmare next. He and his wife were vacationing in India, and they watched one of the mystics doing a magic trick. Sebastian ruins the trick and shows how it's done. He's a bit of a magician himself. Later, Sebastian watches the girl make a rope rise out of the basket by playing a horn. She then climbs the rope. Sebastian can't explain that one and wants to know how it's done. She swears there is no trick. The magic is in the rope. He offers to buy the rope, but she refuses. He lures the girl to their hotel room and has his wife pretend to be sick. The girl starts playing her horn, and the rope rises as before. Sebastian then stabs her in the back and stuffs her corpse in the closet. The evil duo check out the rope and the horn. He plays the horn, and the rope rises. His wife climbs the rope just like the girl did. It works! She goes up and vanishes with a scream.
Whoops.
And then there's a little blood puddle spreads on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Then the rope whips and strangles Sebastian. The next day, the old magician and the not-dead girl do their act in the square.
Don't tamper with things you don't understand.
Bargain in death. Maitland's story begins in a graveyard. He's been buried alive. Well, that's not usually the beginning of the story.
No?
We flash back to him taking pills and a drug to slow his heart. He plans to fake his own death for insurance money, and his friend Alex promises to dig him up within 20 hours of his burial, and they'll split the money. Maitland plans to kill Alex after that, but Alex has his own plan. It's simple. He's not going to dig up Maitland. What great friends.
Yeah, aren't they, though?
A pair of medical students lament that they never have enough cadavers to examine, so they sneak out to the cemetery to dig up Maitland, who ought to still be good and fresh. Meanwhile, Maitland's oxygen is running low. Alex, on the other hand, is driving through town right past the cemetery because he had no intention of rescuing Maitland. Maitland sits up, scaring the medical students who run out into the road, causing Alex to crash and die. Meanwhile, the gravedigger has beaten Maitland to death with his shovel. Sorry about the head, he laments. He just wanted to make sure the medical students got their money's worth.
And they did, nice and fresh.
Except for the head.
Yeah.
And the final story is called Drawn and Quartered.
Starring Doctor Who.
Who?
Who?
Tom Baker.
Yeah. Before he was Who, right?
This came before,
Yeah.
yes.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how big of a star he was at the time, but he had little bit parts here and there. This might have been his big thing.
And he was very good in this.
Uh-huh. Mr. Moore says that his dream happened on the island of Haiti. He's a starving artist, and his friend Bob comes around and reveals that others have been selling Moore's paintings for a small fortune, but Moore had no idea. Moore goes to see the local witch doctor. He wants revenge on those who have wronged him. The witch doctor tells Moore to put his hands in the boiling pot. Moore now has magic hands. Everything he paints becomes real. Oh, what could go wrong there?
Instead of voodoo dolls, he makes voodoo paintings.
He packs up the painting he did of himself and flies back to London to encounter his agent who has been stealing from him. Knowing the value and the danger of having a self-portrait, he locks it in a safe for protection. The agent, the critic, and the gallery owner, who cheated him, meet and gloat about what they did to Moore. They laugh when he says he'll have revenge. He then goes home and starts painting. He does really accurate portraits of the three men.
Yeah, those were good.
Uh-huh. He cuts out the eyes of the art critic painting, and across town, the man's wife throws acid in his face. The art dealer's painting loses his arms. He goes to see the third man, the agent, in person the next morning. He then draws a bullet hole in the man's painting, and the agent shoots himself. He points the gun at Moore, and Moore draws the little circle, and the gun just sort of turns around towards himself. Moore suddenly has trouble breathing. He remembers that his painting is locked in an airtight safe. He gets home and opens it just in time.
And then leaves it sitting out.
Yeah.
Whoops.
He then goes back to the agent's office to retrieve his wristwatch, which he'd forgotten. Meanwhile, a billboard painter above Moore's studio drops a can of paint thinner through the skylight right onto Moore's self-portrait. What happens with paint when you paint a portrait and throw thinner all over it?
Gets all runny and squished looking.
Across town, Moore's head gets run over by a truck.
Right.
Look, it's all runny,
all runny and squished
looking. All 5 men come to the conclusion that these nightmares they all had are memories of their actual deaths. The elevator doors open, and they see the cemetery beyond. Well, this was the sequel to Tales from the Crypt from the previous year, and it's a very similar style. It's a little harder to find today, so it must not have been as popular. Still, I really liked it.
Me too.
The segments are all fairly short, and none of them drag out at all. I think the timing and pacing here is better than the first one.
Yeah, overall I liked it better.
Yeah. They have their little stories, and they all work pretty well. These were stories adapted from comic books, and they have a similar feel, with some establishing stuff, something happens, and then they usually end with some kind of a little unexpected twist. Yeah, it's good. They're both good.
Mm-hmm.
So, then we take us to our final movie of the week, When Animals Dream, from 2014.
And I think we found a gem with this one, in my opinion.
You like this one?
Oh, yeah.
I like
really
this one,
did.
too.
Yeah. Directed by Jonas Alexander Arnby. Written by Rasmus Birch, Christopher Bow, and Jonas Alexander Arnby. I can't read. Yeah. Stars Sonia Sewell, Lars Mikkelsen, and Sonia Richter. Runtime is only an hour and 24 minutes. There's a trailer on YouTube.
I would definitely recommend watching the trailer first, because this is, where's this from? Sweden, Denmark?
Norway, I believe.
One of them places up there. It's cold there. It's very gray.
It is.
It's subtitled,
Gray
which is
and
what I was
cold.
getting at there.
Yes, it is.
Spoiler free.
A sweet romantic coming-of-age story of a young woman finding her way in a small fishing village. Sounds nice, right?
Yeah.
Well, she is coming of age, and there is some romance. Also, lycanthropy and plenty of drama and angst and people being violently killed. This one is a real winner. We both liked it a lot.
I think that sweet may be a little misleading.
Aw. Maybe not so sweet.
All right. So if you haven't seen this one, go out and find it. I think we watched it on Apple TV. It was not a free movie on a streaming service. We paid for this one.
Yeah, rented it online.
Yeah.
But it was worth it. But this one is kind of one worth checking out before you hear spoilers on, I think.
Yeah. Watch it before you hear the spoilers, because there are some spoilers, and here they come. As the credits roll, we see lots of scenes of a very rainy, dreary, small town, and shots of an empty house and dark beaches. We open on Marie, a young woman at the doctor's office. The doctor looks at her teeth, gums, and fingernails. He doesn't have much to say, but wants to see her again next month. She goes home and takes her wheelchair-bound mother out for a roll or walk on the beach. She lives with her parents, and her father seems normal, but her mother is nearly comatose and needs to be spoon-fed. Later, she takes her shirt off, and we see that she has a small red rash on her chest. Little bit of acne or something probably, right?
Yeah, it's nothing to worry about.
Later, Marie starts her new job at the fish processing plant, and Felix and Daniel are a couple of new co-workers who seem friendly. She's one of the very few women there, certainly the most young and attractive, and the male workers all notice. When she takes out the waste leftovers, one man pushes her into the watery dumpster full of fish heads, and they all gather around to applaud and laugh. When she gets out, the boss gives her her own knife. She's been initiated. She goes home a little early and finds Dr. Larson there talking to her father. Marie takes his package of x-rays and notes and begins reading. He has photos of a scratched-up dead man in her file. Later, she gets a peek of her father shaving her mother's back.
Something ain't right there.
That night, Marie has scary, animalistic dreams. Esben is the bully at work, and he picks on Marie. Daniel, on the other hand, likes her. She's sexually assaulted with a dead fish at work by 2 other co-workers. There's no harassment in this film, is
Yeah,
there?
that was a hard scene to watch.
That night, she finds her rash has grown hair, and she starts to have a strange seizure before her father knocks on the door. Marie yells that she doesn't even know what's wrong with her mother. She shows the rash to her father, who is speechless. She overhears her father, whose name is Thor, and Dr. Larson discovering not being able to keep it a secret much longer. Larson says that soon, Marie is likely to grow hair all over her body and become more aggressive unless she takes his medicine. She refuses to take his meds. Apparently that's what's keeping her mother like she is. Okay, so there's nothing really wrong with her. She's just drugged up.
Mm-hmm. It's a part of the agreement. You can keep her at home and you can manage her as long as you keep her under control.
Marie next goes to an old boat that she saw in one of Larson's photos. The hold of the ship is covered in scratches, as if a wild animal had been locked inside. She asks Felix about the boat, and he explains that people were always afraid of her mother, just like they're afraid of her. The Russian owners of the boat have been missing for a very long time. Felix then takes her to a dance club. Daniel is there too, and she whispers to him, "I'm transforming into a monster, and I really need to get laid before. Do you think you can help me?" And then they go off to... That's a great pickup line.
Well, he's on board with it.
Of course he is. They go off to some abandoned building to do the deed, but when he touches her, she gets hairy in that spot. Okay. Her eyes turn yellow in the middle of sex, but he seems to be completely on board with all this.
So it's not really a full moon-driven werewolf change. It's more of a emotional, brought on by emotions. And
Yep.
yeah.
She wakes up at home when her father and the doctor pin her down and try to inject her with the drug. She fights hard, but they don't get to finish because Mom leaps and attacks the doctor, werewolf style, killing him. Marie and Thor bury Larson in the backyard. Marie asks Thor if that's what happened to the Russians, who must have done something to her mother. Next morning, the doctor is missing, obviously, and the townspeople think Thor's wife had something to do with it. They need to examine her, naked, to be sure. What was that about? What do you think they were hoping to find?
Evidence, physical evidence that she had killed the doctor.
They check her fingernails and gums.
Because I think it's an agreement that the villagers have that they know what she is. And, Thor, if you keep her at home and keep her tame, we'll let you do that. But, it's kind of a fine line that they're all walking there.
Yeah, it seems the whole town is in on Mom's little secret. And Thor plays it cool, and so does Marie.
Doctor? No, we haven't seen him. No.
When Marie comes home from work the next morning, she finds her mother drowned in the bathtub. Could it have been suicide? Or did one of the townspeople do it to her?
And until you suggested that, I didn't even think of it. I just thought it was a suicide.
I think it was.
That seems most likely.
But it's not an absolute guarantee. We never really do find out.
No, yeah.
Some of those townspeople look pretty unhappy that she's there.
Yes, very much so.
But yeah, I suspect it was suicide.
I think so.
At the funeral, Marie notices that her fingernails are bleeding. Everyone there stares at her, and it seems that they realize their problems aren't over. She refills everyone's coffee with her bloody hands to make some kind of a defiant statement, literally waving her bloody claws in their faces. She goes to work the next day, hairy chest and all. She's got kind of this low-cut dress, and you can see the hair spilling out. Then, that night on the way home, she's chased by a bunch of guys on motorcycles. They're not putting up with this any longer.
Well, turns out neither is she.
One of the bikers gets his throat torn out. Daniel finds her and warns her that the others are coming for her. He offers to get a boat while she goes home to pack her stuff. They'll run far away together. Thor catches her leaving and lets her go. He says goodbye, basically. He tells her not to take any crap from anyone. The goons from work catch up to her before Daniel returns, but he does see them dragging her away. The others load her aboard a fishing boat and lock her in one of the holds. Probably the same thing that happened to the mother.
Well, maybe, yeah.
The guys on the boat plan to tie her up and throw her overboard, but Daniel gets aboard first and opens the hatch.
See, and I thought that was a good subtlety of performance, or, maybe I was just seeing too much into it. But the townspeople, they're basically good people, and they're reluctant to just outright kill her.
They think they're
And you
doing the
can-
right thing.
Yeah, and you can see their
They
reluctance.
really are, actually. They're
Yeah.
the good guys.
Yeah, but yet, they know it's a girl, and they don't want to kill her, but, they know they have to. And, I thought that was portrayed really well.
Uh-huh, yeah.
All the supporting roles.
Yeah, it's not just an angry mob with pitchforks like usual.
Yeah, not that cut
Yeah.
and dried.
Things go rather badly for the kidnappers and Felix, who betrayed her to the others. Daniel comes out after the attack and hugs Marie. As the sun comes up, only she and Daniel are left. What now?
Happily ever after.
Happy, yep.
Yeah.
Well, it's all super bleak, dreary, and washed out, as every scene is depressing and morose.
Pretty much.
Didn't Thor ever realize that a little communication goes a long way?
Well, I think he was really bottling it up and
In denial.
hoping that it wouldn't be passed on to the girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But most of what happened and the angst involved could have been avoided had he not been in denial for so long.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, he was conflicted by loving a woman who was a killing machine. He didn't want to have to keep her drugged, but he felt like he had to. Daniel suspected, and then knew, what Marie was going to become. He was not only okay with it, but fully embraced it. An interesting choice.
And I like that moment at the end where after she kills everybody, it's just the two of them on the deck, and you can see his hesitation, like, does she recognize me? Does she still like me?
At first, the condition appears to be genetic, but later on, there's mentions of the Russians doing something to Marie's mother, so we don't really know what caused all of this in the first place. It's definitely a disease, so the full moon, silver bullets, and the like don't really apply here, but it's clearly a lycanthropic condition of some sort. Marie never actually turns into a werewolf of the usual kind, but she gets a hairy face, claws, and big teeth. She looks a little bit different, and the whole film is a slow, dramatic burn more than a straight-up monster movie, but it is really cool.
Excellent. Yes,
Yeah.
it was.
Definitely I don't know, I guess probably the best of the week. I like those anthologies, but the werewolf movie is probably best.
Yep, I think so.
And that is our show for this week.
Yes,
Tune in next
indeed.
week for 4 more horror films in a short. Stop in at horrorguys.com to read all the reviews. Stop in at horrorbulletin.com to sign up for the newsletter. Pick up our books, horrorguys.com/books. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook. Check out the show notes for all the links to everything down at the bottom.
Check it all out.
Yeah. I'm Brian,
And I'm Kevin.
and we'll see you next week.
See ya.